Hello and welcome to this session on output caching for dynamic web pages in IIS7. My name is Mike Ormond. I work for Microsoft Limited in the UK. And in this session, we're going to be talking about optimizing your website performance using the output caching features in IIS. This really is about reducing the workload on the web server, reducing the workload on your database, and reducing the number of round trips by specifying to the web server that particular pages or particular types of pages we can assume will remain static, or at least will be served up consistently for a period of time or until the underlying page itself changes. For example, if I edit the PHP page or the ASP page. Now, IIS automatically provides output caching capabilities for static pages. For example, an HTML page will automatically be cached in the output cache unless the underlying HTML page itself is edited, because it's fairly clear that that page is not going to change. But pages such as PHP, ASP, ASPX pages have dynamic content generated on the fly, and we need to tell IIS how to handle those, how to cache those pages in the output cache, and when the cached version should and should not be served up, and when the cached version should be expired, etc. So imagine, for example, I was building, an estate agent's website, and I had a set of properties on that site, and it was a PHP page that the user queries to get that list of properties. Then it might be quite acceptable for that page to remain the same for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time, and we can use the output cache and specify an expiration of, say, 15 minutes on that page, such that each user that requests that page, rather than the PHP page running on the server in the background, that page will just be served up from the web server's cache until that cache expires, and then the PHP page will rerun, render a new version of the page, that will be put into output cache, and then that will be served up for the next 15 minutes, etc. Now, clearly that might be acceptable for the estate agent's web page. If this was something like a foreign exchange or stock trading site, then that caching value, the timeout value, is going to have to be significantly reduced, because those things are much more time dependent, much more time critical. But in principle, the same things apply. You can set that particular pages, particular types of page are cached. You can set expiration policies on those pages. And what I want to look at in this session is just how you go about configuring that in IIS7. Now, to help me demonstrate what's going on here, I've created a couple of PHP pages that just simply render the current time. So I've got one called no cache. Now, I need to be very clear, there's no difference in functionality between the PHP pages themselves. The code is identical, aside from the title of the page. The code is identical. The only difference in caching functionality is going to be introduced by me changing settings on the server and in configuration. But we've got this page called no cache, and you can see if I click on the refresh, then that page is being refreshed as soon as I click that button. There's no caching going on because the time is updating. If that was being served out of the output cache, then that time would stay static until the point where the cache expired and the page was rerun on the server. So you can see that there as soon as I click refresh. Same for the other pages. I say the code's identical right now. The code is identical. I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to change the configuration behind the scenes. So let's set the output caching policy on the server itself, and that will cascade down to all the sites on the server and all the pages on those sites. So in IIS Manager, if you need to bring up IIS Manager, just go to the start button, type in IIS, and up will come the option for IIS Manager. Click on that, it will bring up Internet Information Services Manager, and select our server, which in my case is this one here, and double click on output caching. That will bring us to the output caching page. And then if you select add, we can go ahead and add an output caching rule. So the extension we're interested in this case is PHP. We're going to use user mode caching. Click on advanced. Advanced gives us the option to say, well, and we won't use it in this case because I haven't got query strings, or I'm not going to be varying my query strings or my headers, but it allows me to introduce the concept that, for example, let's go back to my state agent example. Perhaps my query string has the town that we're searching in, or perhaps it has the price that we're searching for. Now clearly if somebody searches for the town of Cambridge and that gets cached, when somebody comes along and searches for Reading, we don't want to serve up the cached version for Cambridge. We need to recreate a Reading version and store that in the cache. So I could say here, vary by query string variable not twan town. If I can just type it correctly. We could vary by query string variable town, and that would ensure that for each unique query string, for each unique town that is queried, we create a cached version, and then that version is served up in the cache if that particular town is queried again. We could also use the wildcard character there to say for each unique combination of query string variables, cache a version of this and only serve up that version for the same combination of query string variables. As I say, I'm not going to use that because I'm not using query strings. We can also do the same thing for headers as well, so we can vary by headers. But in our case, we're going to keep things nice and simple. So we'll say for all PHP files, we will use a time expiration. You can set this, it's not terribly useful, or not as useful for dynamic pages, but this says if somebody edits the underlying page, so if I was to go in and modify the code behind this, we would recognize that that file had been changed and refresh the cache version. Much more common is to use a time expiration. So let's say that we have a time expiration of 10 seconds, and if I OK that now, that rule, that output caching rule, will be applied to all PHP pages on my server. So let's go back to our pages here. Pick one of these. So let's pick the no cache page. Makes no difference. The pages are identical and the rules applied to both of them. So just let it refresh, and we're at 1809:39, and I'm clicking refresh. You can see from the status bar down at the bottom, I'm clicking refresh, and you'll see it updates at 50 seconds. And then again, each of these refreshes are being served out the output cache until we get to 1810, and you'll see that the page gets refreshed. So we are caching that page for 10 seconds. And you see that identical behavior on the time underscore cache page as well. It takes a couple of refreshes just to get itself in sync, and then you'll see that that gets cached in exactly the same way. So that's how we apply the rule to the web server, and therefore all PHP pages on the server.